do not want to belabor in this report, but I pray that this House will find it in its wisdom, that this House will find it in its wisdom to adopt the committee's report, so that then going forward the committee's report, so that then going forward we can exercise duty by the Constitution as a House duty to oversight and to see that the proper use to oversight all these monies that are proper use of all these monies. Mr. Speaker, finally, on the issue of liquidity, Mr. Speaker, finally, you realize that liquidity, the government at times suffers. You realize that because the government at times suffers, but the money remains in the purse of the lender. You borrow money, but the money remains in the purse of the lender. You can only access that money because at times the clauses in these contracts where we borrow are not Kenya friendly. They are not friendly to the borrower. How comes that I walk into a bank, borrow money, but it is under the purview of the bank to tell me how I'm going to spend that money, or at what rate I can withdraw. Here I'm expected to be repaying that money while it is not in my pocket, and they are not going to charge interest on the money that I have drawn down. It is on the entire loan. I think it is upon us now as a House to pronounce ourselves, and maybe the National Treasury needs to relook into the kind of contracts that they are signing, so that then once we borrow money, then that money can hit our coffers here. That is going to improve our liquidity. And maybe even the issue of depreciation of Kenya shilling in terms of exchange rate compared to foreign currency, we are going to cure that because we'll have enough in our coffers. Mr. Speaker, I wish to support this report and request that all the members of this House find it in their heart to support this, because it's going to be the game changer in terms of how we oversight our loans. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honorable Abraham Kirwa, Member of Parliament, Mosob.
Thank you again, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity to actually support this report of the Committee of Debt and Privatization. I truly want also to commend the committee for the great job that they have done. And sincerely, Mr. Speaker, this committee actually plays a huge role in making sure that the loans that this country undertake will be actual loans that actually can be dispersed, loans that can actually be accounted for, and loans that can actually go for what exactly was intended to do. I want to support some of the suggestions and recommendations from this committee, because looking at some of the loans that it said that this country undertook a huge loan, but the amount of loans that was truly dispersed was only 11%. You know, during the review of this loan, it was noted that only 3 loans totaling to 24.2 billion, primarily commercial loans, had been partially dispersed, indicating a disbursement rate of only 11%. But the rest of the loans was not disclosed as to whether it was actually dispersed or it was not really dispersed on a timely manner. And as such, the country has committed to have taken these loans. They continue to pay commitment fees, which is continuously causing the country to pay a lot of money without really this loan being used within the country. And as such, the recommendation that 8.3, which I want to actually look into it, that says that the committee recommended that in order to facilitate the oversight of debt and to promote transparency and accountability of loan contracts entered into, the National Treasury should attach the contract signed against each submitted report and should not enter into any contract that does not adhere to the principles of public finance as set under the Article 201 of the Constitution. This will help us, Mr. Speaker, because for every contract that is signed, we should be able to review. The Parliament should be able to look into it. Who signed it? When was it intended for? And how is it going to help this country? On recommendation number 8.9, no later than 30 days of the end of each financial year, ministries, state departments, and implementing agencies, the MDAs, responsible for the projects for which the loans have been obtained should submit a report to the National Assembly indicating the measures taken. Mr. Speaker, this period of time, the 30 days, is going to help us so that if there was any monkey games being played, we should be able to catch it at the debt committee, and we should be able to follow it with the appropriate departments as to why the loan has been incurred, and if the loan really was used for what it was supposed to be. On the recommendation number 811, as from financial year 2024-2025, at the end of the sector working group engagement, the National Treasury should submit to the National Assembly a report containing the list of potential projects for which the loan financing will be contracted, the potential creditors, and the respective loan terms, so that we understand as to exactly why we are taking these loans and if these loans has actually been used and has been dispersed. And recommendation number 812, Mr. Speaker, arising from 811 above, the final list of the projects to be financed through the borrowing should be submitted to the National Assembly. All this recommendation is coming to the National Assembly so that we become the watchdogs and we become the people who can actually make sure that the money that we are taking as a nation, because our loans right now is standing about 9.6 trillion amount of shillings that we have taken as a country. But most of those are not performing loans. Some of those loans are non-performing. Some of them have not been dispersed. And as a country, we are truly going through a lot of, we are paying a lot that we have not really incurred. 3, on committee observation number 7.1. The submitted report lacked project-specific information required to guide policy making and oversight, which indicates low level of transparency and accountability. Most of the loans that was taken does not actually, are not transparent. It doesn't show as to when it was taken, why it was taken, and where it was used. And so this recommendation that the committee says within 30 days of signing the contract, it should be submitted to the parliament so that they can review and understand. And also committee observation number 7.2, as per the reports, only 3 loans that it said, I've already mentioned that, was dispersed, 11%. But the rest of the almost 89% of the loans and resources, despite being signed for, remain undispersed. So I want to truly support this report of the committee, that we need to look into the loans that we take as a nation and also hold the Treasury accountable and also the department that are actually undertaking the loans, so that this country will be responsible for every loan and all the debts that we take as a nation. So I stand to support this report. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Very well. In other jurisdictions, honorable members, any loans taken by government on behalf of the state, like Ghana, are actually sanctioned by Parliament. But I think we are moving properly well. Now, next to speak on this is the Honorable Catherine Omanyo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Very much in order. Next to speak on this is Honorable Catherine Omanyo. Are you ready?
Yes.
Proceed.
Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I really have looked into the budget, and the borrowing is haphazardly done. It's too much, and the rate at which Kenya is borrowing compared to the rate at which development is happening, there is something amiss. I even do not understand why there is no money to go to county levels to help in disaster management, because right now even governors are in a quagmire, they are stranded, there's no money to handle El Nino. And yet I'm seeing the country has been borrowing over and over. Even right now, I'm sure where the president is, he has gone to borrow again. So we need to cut our cloth according to our size as a nation and not exorbitantly keep borrowing and put our future generations in trouble, because all we are doing today is what our future generations will feel. In fact, it's not even future. We are already feeling it right now. It is better to borrow and actually make sure that we use that money to create new money for us, create new avenues for everybody in our country to get a way of making their own life bearable. But at the moment, when you see how much the government has been borrowing compared to what Kenyans are receiving, it is imbalanced. So we need to hit a pivot at the right place to balance what we are asking compared to what we are doing. Because if we do not have industries and things that will bring or create jobs and create new money in our country, we are going into a brink. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honorable Paul Biego.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir, for giving me this opportunity. And I stand here to support the report from the committee. And kudos to the chairman and his vice and the committee members for actually giving us a very good report. And what has really interested me is the fact that they have factored in, and actually it has been properly taken note in 8.3, that in addition to the PFM Act 2012 provisions, the reports indicated above should also include information related to, and that is what has made me actually rise, that the report on the use of export credit agencies, that the ECA, and respective contingent liability exposure. And that will include contracts signed, expected benefits to the country, and any guarantee offered should be subject to the approval of Parliament. And I believe if that is effected, then we'll really take good care of any liabilities or any loans that are being taken on behalf of the country. And also what I support strongly is the fact that central bank's overdraft facility, the use of overdraft facilities would be factored in, and probably there would be no misuse of such kind of funds. And of course, also the quarterly reporting on the projects would be able to know and would be able to be well guided. So, Mr. Speaker, I take this opportunity to support strongly the report from the committee. Thank you.
The Honorable Dawood.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity also to add my voice in support of this very important report by the Public Debt Committee. Mr. Speaker, I also want to take this opportunity to thank not only the members of the committee led by the chair, Honorable Sharia, but the able secretariat from the Parliamentary Budget Office led by the clerk, Wanachacha. Mr. Speaker, sir, the basis of us getting this report is Section 31(1) of the PFM Act. I want to read it for my colleagues. Section 31(1) says, the Cabinet Secretary, and that is Cabinet Secretary for Treasury, shall submit to Parliament every 4 months a report of all loans made to national government entities, and county governments in accordance with Article 211(2) of the Constitution. Mr. Speaker, you will note that the report that is being discussed this afternoon has a lot of loans that have been contracted by the national government. And those loans are not all the loans. Mr. Speaker, sir, you will note that the loans being discussed are only those that are foreign in nature. There are no domestic loans that are being shown in this report. So I will urge the committee, in line with Section 31(1) of the PFM Act, to demand the Cabinet Secretary to report all loans, including the domestic loans, that this government or this country takes. You will note that, Mr. Speaker, that the budget we have just passed had a fiscal deficit of 861 billion shillings, which is the amount that we will borrow this year. And to reiterate what the leader of majority has said, we are not borrowing 4.3 trillion, we're only borrowing 861 billion. Half of that will be external borrowing, and slightly over half of that will be domestic borrowing, which is about 449. So this House, as the law demands, will want a report of the domestic borrowing in addition to the one that we are discussing. Mr. Speaker, you will note that Section 31(1) also talks about borrowings by national government entities, and county governments. I know that constitutionally there is a separation between the Senate and the National Assembly. But this report, Section 31(1), says that the Cabinet Secretary must report these loans. So in addition to the loans, both foreign and domestic, I hope that the next time we are discussing loans and a report of this committee, we will also see borrowings by county government. Mr. Speaker, borrowings or public finance is underpinned by Article 201 of the Constitution. I want to remind my colleagues and members of this House that this article talks about that burdens and benefits and the use of resource must be shared between this generation and future generation. These loans, as they come, the report also must include an intergenerational equity. We don't want to burden our grandchildren with debt that they have not taken, and we don't also want to take the burden of our grandchildren and pay for debts that should be for later generations. Article 201 also talks about equity, geographical equity. This report, or the next report that will come to this House, must also show that the loans that have been taken are also, there is an equity as far as geographical distribution of those loans are concerned. We will not want to see Kenyans paying for loans only going for development of certain parts of Kenya. It must be, if we are sharing the burden of paying for the loan, we must also share the benefits of those loans. Therefore, in the next report, I will hope that the committee for which I'm a member of will have both the intergenerational equity report and the geographical equity report. Mr. Speaker, sir, in the report, you will see that submissions by the Controller of Budget, paragraph 6.3, that some of the loans that some of the state-owned agencies, semi-autonomous state-owned agencies take are being signed for by the national government. The committee has noted that that is not something that the national government should be doing. According to our constitution, the national government should only guarantee loans for semi-autonomous institutions and not be the ones signing the loans on behalf of those institutions. So this is something else that this committee will be looking out for and making sure that we are not burdened by loans for semi-autonomous government institutions that can pay those loans. A case in point is the guarantees that we are now paying for Kenya Airways. Mr. Speaker, sir, there are some loans which are signed for by the national government that this committee needs to be seized of, but are disbursed by county governments. In the next report, we will want those loans. One of them is like the World Bank loan that goes to my area by the name Kenya Development Response to Displaced Impact Project, K-Dr. that we appropriate here. The loans are taken, but they are done by the county. This committee also must be seized of those loans and must be able, when we are looking at the cost-benefit analysis of these projects, we must see even those loans that have been taken on behalf of county governments but are appropriated by this House. Mr. Speaker, other than those points, I would like to agree with all the observations and the recommendations by the committee, and we'll hope that in the next report it will be much more richer and informed by the observations made by our colleagues. I support, Mr. Speaker.
The Honorable Amina Mnazi.
Asante sana Mheshimiwa Spika kwa kunipatia fursa hii niweze kuongelelea kuhusu hii ripoti ambayo imeweza kufikishwa kwetu na hii kamati ya ambayo tunaangalia masuala ya uchumi ya pesa zetu hapa ndani ya Kenya. Mheshimiwa Spika, mimi kama kiongozi mchanga ambaye ni mara yangu ya kwanza kuja katika bunge la taifa, naweza nikasema ya kwamba mimi niko na wasiwasi mkubwa sana Mheshimiwa Spika kuhusu madeni ambayo sisi kama Wakenya tunajiweka hapo ndani. Mheshimiwa Spika, naona maisha yetu sisi kama Wakenya katika miaka 10 na 20 inayokuja yatakuwa ni magumu zaidi kulingana na zile pesa ambazo serikali yetu ya Kenya kila siku tunakwenda kuomba. Mheshimiwa Spika, uketi ukijua sisi Waswahili tunasema dawa ya deni ni kulipa. Na haya madeni yote ambayo sisi tunachukua, dawa yake ni kwamba sisi kama Wakenya lazima tuweze kulipa. Na tusipolipa sisi, ina maana ni watoto wetu, kuna wajukuu wetu, vitukuu vyetu ndio ambao watakuja kuumia kwa kulipa madeni ambao dakika hii sisi kama Wakenya tunakwenda kuchukua. Mheshimiwa Spika, nimeangalia hiyo ripoti vizuri na wanasema kati ya mwezi wa Mei mwaka 2022 na mwezi wa April mwaka wa 2023 kuna bilioni 213.24 zenye ambazo zimechukuliwa. Mheshimiwa Spika, ni lazima na sisi pia tueleze wakati wa serikali ya handshake kama hawa ndugu zetu wanavyosema, wakati kipindi hicho cha mwaka mmoja serikali ya handshake ilichukua bilioni 1.5 kumaanisha ya kwamba pesa ambazo sisi saizi ambazo tumekwenda kuomba Mheshimiwa Spika zimeweza kuongezeka zaidi ukiangalia serikali ya Kenya Kwanza ya sasa na ile serikali ya handshake, kuna tofauti kubwa ya pesa ambazo zimekwenda kuombwa. Mheshimiwa Spika, sisi kama nchi ni lazima tuangalie kabla hatujakwenda kuomba pesa kule nje, pato letu la kitaifa liko vipi? Pato letu la kitaifa ni pesa ambazo zinaweza kustahamili na kuvumilia na kuangalia mikakati jinsi gani ambavyo hizi pesa zitalipwa, kwa sababu sisi kama serikali tunajua serikali iko na namna nyingi ya kuweza kupata pesa. Jambo la kwanza ni serikali iweze kuongeza ushuru, na huo ushuru ndo ni mambo ambayo sisi tumekataa kama watu wa Azimio. Tunasema kwamba hatutaki kuongezewa ushuru kwa sababu tayari bei ya maisha tayari iko juu. Pia vile vile sisi tunasema jambo la pili ambalo serikali inaweza kufanya ni kupunguza matumizi. Jambo la tatu ambalo serikali inaweza kufanya ili kuweza kupata pesa ni kuweza kuomba pesa. Sasa wao wanasema serikali ya Kenya Kwanza wakati wa handshake tayari kulikuwa kuna pesa ambazo ziliombwa. Cha kustajabisha dakika hii Mheshimiwa Spika, ni kama tumefungua milango ya watu kwenda kuomba kila mahali, kushoto, kulia, mbele na nyuma. Kila siku tunaona watu wanatoka hapa wanaenda nje kwenda kuomba na kuzidi kuleta mikopo na madeni kwetu sisi kama Wakenya. Mheshimiwa Spika, na mimi kama kiongozi hiyo inaniuma nikifikiria kuna watoto wangu na wajukuu wangu ambao watakuja kuteseka na yale madeni ambao sisi leo hii tunakwenda kuchukua. Mheshimiwa Spika, pale awali sisi kiwango cha juu kabisa ambayo sisi tunaita kwa kimombo the national debt ceiling ilikuwa ni bilioni trilioni. Sisi kama Wakenya leo hii tungekuwa tumetahayari kwa sababu tusingejua ni mahali gani ambapo tunakwenda kuzimbua pesa. Hii kiwango cha juu kabisa kimeshaondolewa, lakini hii mimi kwangu mimi ndio naona kuna athari kubwa zaidi, kwa sababu saizi kuna mambo ambayo hayaeleweki Mheshimiwa Spika. Tunapokopa hizi pesa, Mheshimiwa Spika, sisi kama nchi ni lazima tujue ni jinsi gani ambavyo tunakwenda kuzilipa hizi pesa. Na hilo jambo ni lazima liwekwe wazi kwa Wakenya, tuelewe tunakwenda kukopa na ni jinsi gani ambavyo tunapanga mikakati gani kama nchi ya kuweza kulipa haya madeni. Mambo kama hayo, Mheshimiwa Spika, mimi sijaona. Kitu ambacho mimi naona ni watu kuamka na kwenda kukopa pasipo kufikiria zile njia ambazo sisi tutakwenda kuzilipia haya madeni. Mheshimiwa Spika, haya madeni pia hayana uwazi. Hayana uwazi kabisa, Mheshimiwa Spika. Wakati wa kwenda kuchukua mikopo ni watu kidogo wanakwenda kuchukua mikopo. Lakini wakati wa kulipa tunatarajiwa sisi kama Wakenya, kila mtu, wazee kwa watoto, wanawake kwa wanaume, sote tuweze kulipa. Mheshimiwa Spika, hilo si jambo ambalo linanifurahisha mimi. Tunataka kuwe kuna uwazi. Ukimuuliza waziri wa fedha, unapitishwa stories za hapa na pale. Mheshimiwa Spika, hatujaona agreement zenye ambazo tuko nazo sisi kama nchi na nchi zingine. Mheshimiwa Spika, hatujaona agreements ambazo ziko kati yetu sisi wa Kenya na wale wa Kenya wengine ambao wanatufadhili sisi. Vitu kama hivyo, Mheshimiwa Spika, ni lazima viwe viko wazi. Ndipo pale serikali ambayo iko mamlakani ikieleza kuna madeni, sisi kama wa Kenya tu tunajua madeni ni gani na ni pesa ngapi ambao tunafaa tulipe kila mwezi ama kila mwaka. Mheshimiwa Spika, serikali yetu sasa ni lazima tuache kutegemea misaada ambayo inatoka nje. Hii misaada ambayo inatoka nje, Mheshimiwa Spika, ndio ambayo inatusukuma sisi kama nchi. Leo hii tunasikia ukitaka pesa kutoka nchi kadhaa, ni lazima nchi yetu kama ya Kenya tupitishe sheria za ushoga na usagaji, wa kizungu ni LGBTQ. Kwa sababu sisi wenyewe tumekataa kujitegemea. Tunategemea watu ambao wanatoka nje. Na ndio maana tunapata na tunaweza kuwekewa sheria ngumu kama hizo. Na ndio maana tunapoteza nchi yetu kwa kuweka sheria na vitu ambavyo havieleweki, Mheshimiwa Spika. Hapo zamani, juzi na jana, Mheshimiwa Spika, najua masuala ya utalii. Utalii ulikuwa unaleta pesa nyingi sana hapa Kenya. Saa hizi utalii wote umeondoka, watu wanaenda Tanzania, watu wanaenda Zanzibar. Na sijasikia mikakati yoyote ambayo iko hapa ili kuweza kufufua utalii wetu. Saa hizi hatuna dola za kutosha, hatuna pesa za kigeni za kutosha. Tungeweka mikakati katika masuala ya utalii, angalau tungekuwa tuna afueni sisi kama watu wa Kenya. Matumizi ya pesa, kila siku tunadanganywa pesa zinakwenda kuchukuliwa kwa sababu ya kufanya miradi. Ukweli wa maneno ni kwamba matumizi ya pesa hapa Kenya ni mabaya, Mheshimiwa Spika. Mheshimiwa Spika, kuna a lot of corruption hapa ndani ya Kenya. Zile pesa ambazo zinaenda kuomba yenyewe ni deni. Na badala lifanyie jambo la muhimu, watu waweze kuona hizo pesa zinamalizikia katika mifuko ya watu, Mheshimiwa Spika. Hilo ni jambo lingine ambalo linanisikitisha sana, Mheshimiwa Spika. Lengine, Mheshimiwa Spika, ni kwamba haya madeni ambao sisi tunakwenda kuchukua kama nchi, mapendekezo yangu mimi ni kwamba yaweze kupitishwa na bunge la kitaifa. Kwa sababu kama sisi tunaketi hapa na tukipanga masuala ya pesa zinavyotumika ndani ya Kenya yetu, nafikiria pia sisi tuko na haki ya kujua hizi pesa ambazo zinatoka nje zinakuja hapa Kenya kivipi, na tuweze kuzipitisha. Kwa sababu sisi ndio ambao ni sauti ya wale wanyonge kule nje, Mheshimiwa Spika. Sasa saa hizi kila mtu anakuja na stori zake, Mheshimiwa Spika, pasipo na mwelekeo mzuri. Nikimalizia, Mheshimiwa Spika, mimi ombi langu lengine ni kwamba kuhusu haya madeni yetu tuweze kufanya ukaguzi. Ukaguzi, Mheshimiwa Spika, kwa kizungu ni audit. Tuweze kufanya ukaguzi ama audit ya yale madeni yote ambayo sisi tuko nayo. Ndio tuweze kuelewa haswa sisi wa Kenya ni mahali gani ambapo tumesimama na jinsi gani ambavyo tunaweza kujiondoa katika hii shida. Asante sana, Spika.
Very well, well spoken. Wacha tumsikie sasa Honorable Member for Tetu, Geoffrey Mwangi. The Honorable Geoffrey Mwangi. Yes, there's a microphone just close to you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, for giving me an opportunity to also contribute and voice my support on the report on the loans contracted by the national government between the months of May 2022 and April 2023. Mr. Speaker, I'll start by saying that this report is a very much welcome report, because in this country, there are certain things that, depending on who you ask, you get different answers. And one of those things is the level of national debt. It has become the subject of media speculation. It has become the subject of analysis. It has become the subject of all manner of accusation as to who borrowed more and who borrowed less and who borrowed what and who borrowed when all that debate is completely unnecessary and actually unhelpful. Mr. Speaker, one of the things I would recommend is the establishment of a national debt registry. And Mr. Speaker, debt in a country is not a crime. A government borrowing is not a crime. That's how all governments around the world operate. They borrow from other governments, from multilateral lenders, from the domestic market. And because debt is a public issue, I see no reason why Treasury and the executive cannot bring transparency by having a national debt registry. And I've spoken about this, Mr. Speaker, in this House, whereby any Tom, Dick, and Harry, anybody who wants to access any information about any loan borrowed, because there's no loan borrowed in secret or for secret purposes. All these loans are for Kenyans, and they are all borrowed with a good intention. There should be a place where they can go and be able to pick up this information, verify for themselves, understand how much money was borrowed, what it was borrowed for, what are the loan terms, were there any collaterals issued, when will it be due, etc., etc. Mr. Speaker, I would also like to say that this debt registry should not only just contain, the multilateral loans, but also domestic loans, because domestic loans and the infrastructure bonds are published all the time by the central bank. We know how much the government has borrowed at each point. And this can also include any guarantees that we have given to government entities, any loans that have been picked by county government, and any money borrowed by government agencies. But Mr. Speaker, as we bring transparency to this whole debt situation, so that all Kenyans don't have to be, it doesn't need to be the subject of speculation. I think it is important that our country, we give it a hard thought of how we want to manage our debt going forward. And Mr. Speaker, it is not a secret that right now our debt levels are not at very, very comfortable levels. There is something that needs to be done on them. And I propose two things, Mr. Speaker, as I support this report. That one, we need to rein in on waste and corruption, and especially unhelpful recurrent expenditure, so that we ensure that the few resources that we have go to the productive economy. We must also ask ourselves, the money that we borrow, what projects do we invest? What's the return on investment? Which are the places that we can borrow and put our money and get the highest return, either in terms of improving infrastructure to ensure that you have better access to markets, either in terms of building certain capacities so that the nation is more productive. These are the things that we must concern ourselves, Mr. Speaker. The other issue I would like to raise is that we must widen the tax base, because as a country we have to reduce our budget deficit. And the only way we can do this is not by going to borrow more, but by ensuring that as a country we have a wide tax base so that we have enough resources for ourselves. Because there is no country that also can grow entirely if it does not produce its own resources, either in form of taxes or levies. So it is very, very important that we ensure that we widen the resource base. Mr. Speaker, when we borrow domestically, we also crowd the productive private sector. Today, part of the reasons why our interest rates have gone to 18 to 20% is because myself as a borrower and yourself as a borrower, we are also competing, with the government for resources. So how can the government ensure that we widen the tax base so that we have less and less of this domestic borrowing, and then we supplement the deficits that we are going to have
with foreign loans. So, Mr. Speaker, I rise to support, and I like the transparency, and I like the fact that, for once we are tabling this. Let us ensure that we build this national debt register, ensure it is transparent, ensure that, in this country, there is no secret, about debt, because every country in the world borrows, but what we must emphasize is responsible borrowing, and also to ensure that the funds that we borrow are used for the most productive aspects of the economy, and we ensure that we stem any waste, in the borrowing. Mr. Speaker, I rise to support, and thank you for your time.
The Honorable Emmanuel Wangwe.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I rise to support the report by the Committee on Public Debt on the status of the loan contracted by the national government between May 2022 and April 2023. Honorable Speaker, this report is a good report. It's coming at a time, Honorable Speaker, when there is so much speculation in the country on how much money has been borrowed and at what time has been borrowed. Honorable Speaker, looking at the report as it has scheduled between the month of May last year to the month of April this year, that, Honorable Speaker, 213 billion was borrowed. Therefore, this report confirms the status of our borrowing as a country to other foreign countries, Honorable Speaker. What is it that we mean by borrowing, Honorable Speaker? And the question that comes into play is borrowing bad? The answer is no. Borrowing is not bad, but borrow for a good cause. Let us understand, Honorable Speaker, whether these resources that have been borrowed have been expended on a good cause, Honorable Speaker. And Honorable Speaker, when you look at the expenditure that has been itemized on various issues, I want to single out, Honorable Speaker, one issue which has been put into the programs, for example, being, Honorable Speaker, one program that has costed 4.25 billion shillings, being food security and youth employment in Western Kenya through local climate resilience project. Honorable Speaker, I come from Western Kenya. If we are borrowing, Honorable Speaker, for the purpose of helping the people of Western Kenya to defeat the challenges in climate change, it's good. But, Honorable Speaker, what is happening is the funds have been borrowed, but they have not been disbursed. We now have floods. We now have challenges of climate change in Western Kenya. What are we trying to say? We are now saying this is a good report that is coming at a time, Honorable Speaker, when Parliament has now to really give oversight to what the executive has done. It has a good idea, but we must enforce, Honorable Speaker, and say, can we then let these resources go to our people? Our people need these resources. What happens, we are talking of our debt ceiling, our debt portfolio, Honorable Speaker, being 10.5 trillion. Where is this money that is now supposed, is also congesting that ceiling, that space, Honorable Speaker, so that we are now talking of a figure which is on paper. We want to see that the executive of the day, Honorable Speaker, as it has planned, let it implement the course, Honorable Speaker. We are looking at the other issue which has touched my attention, Honorable Speaker, is the program on promotion of entrepreneurship and employment. Honorable Speaker, Center for Entrepreneurship, the borrowing is 3.55 billion shillings. But what's the cause? The cause is addressing issues of the youth, so that the youth can now get employment. The youth can now use the skills they've acquired in universities to undertake what they can earn on a daily basis, Honorable Speaker. Instead, Honorable Speaker, what is it that's happening? The report is showing that these resources are undisbursed. Therefore, Honorable Speaker, we are saying the executive has a good cause, but what is happening today is that the resources are taking a whole year. When you look at when was the debt signed, in December 2022, for both cases, by the government of Kenya, together with the Federal Republic of Germany. This is a good cause, Honorable Speaker, but why is it that it's not being implemented? That is where now, Honorable Speaker, we come in, and I say it is high time, Honorable Speaker, that now Parliament takes its position to oversight the executive fully, so that we put the executive to account. Honorable Speaker, the President has delivered by signing the concessional loans. What is the Minister for Agriculture doing that is keeping this money not being disbursed? The activities should be there so that the Treasury disperses the resources. Therefore, Honorable Speaker, we should make sure that we put the ministers or the CSs to task to make sure that they do their work, deliver the status that has been concessioned to, and we have work being done. Honorable Speaker, in the 12th Parliament, where I served with you, you'll agree with me that such a reports were not there. We never used to discuss these reports. This is a golden opportunity, Honorable Speaker, that we now need to go a notch higher and say, we are not just going to discuss reports to this House. Let also, when the executive is signing to these concessions, get notes from Parliament, Honorable Speaker. We don't just get papers dropped into Parliament, but they've not been concessioned to. Therefore, Honorable Speaker, this is a step towards the right direction. The country has moved to the next level. And Honorable Speaker, when you look at our Constitution 2010, Article 114, especially Part 3, which now talks about the issues on receivables, receipts of public resources. Honorable Speaker, we need to go a notch higher and advance and say, before we even receive these resources, can Parliament have a say on these resources that we are committing, Honorable Speaker? And Honorable Speaker, looking at what has happened, that now a committee can sit down and open up, dissect two things. The report we discussed yesterday, Honorable Speaker, on CFS, and the report that we are discussing today. What it means, Honorable Speaker, Kenyans can now access the right information. We need not to rely on hearsays. We can get the right information. We can talk of the figures that we know. We can now debate. And Honorable Speaker, tell Kenyans that indeed we have overborrowed, that indeed we are borrowing for XYZ costs. Therefore, Honorable Speaker, I see Parliament growing further. I see Parliament now legislating well and oversight in the executive, which I feel, Honorable Speaker, further to what I've said, we also need not just to be receiving this as a report. My suggestion to the committee is, can we have it as a statement annually? So that, Honorable Speaker, despite the quarterly reports proposed by the committee, can we then have it also annually? So that we dissect and monitor the various loans that the government has borrowed within that fiscal year. Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I support the report.
The Honorable Moroto, do you want to speak on this?
Asante sana, Bwana Spika, kwa kunipa nafasi ili pia nichangie wazo ama hii report ya committee. Kwanza nataka nishukuru sana wale committee ambao waliketi na wakakubaliana wote mpaka leo vile tumepata report hapa mbele yetu. Tunajua hii ni mwendo mzuri na ni mwelekeo ambayo itapeleka Kenya na watu wa Kenya kwa njia ambayo itawasaidia siku za usoni. Mheshimiwa Speaker, nakumbuka committee kama hii haikuwa kwa hizo na Parliament ambayo imepita yote. Kwa hivyo nataka nichukue nafasi pia kushukuru wale viongozi ambao wanatuongoza, kuanzia ninyi wale speakers pamoja na wale walichangia kuona kwamba waunde committees ambayo inaweza kusaidia mambo kama haya. Kwa sababu ilikuwa ni vigumu. Sasa unajua wenye na deal na mambo ya madeni, si kitu ambayo itakuwa ni huyu anashika yule anashika, ni hawa wanajua kwamba nini inaingia nini inatoka. Kwa hivyo tunaona kwamba kuna mwelekeo. Mheshimiwa Speaker, ile kitu ambayo nataka ni waulize wenzangu, mnajua kwamba hii ni mkono moja ya serikali. Najua kwamba tunaambia kwamba serikali iko na mikono mitatu. Hii ni mmoja. Kwa hivyo wakati tunasema kwamba serikali imefanya hivi, unajua kwamba sisi wenyewe tunaweka kidole tunajiangalizia ile mkono upande wetu. Kwa hivyo lazima tuseme vile sasa report imekuja hivi, tuwe na watu ambao watafuata. Kama ile kuna ile committee ya implementation, au waanze kuona kwamba kuna nini ambayo inaendelea. Kama kuna nini committee nyingine ambayo inasidi hapo hivi, kwa sababu ni sisi ndio tunaweza kuweka Kenya iwe Kenya, hapa mpaka wananchi, kwa sababu ni wananchi walijitokeza na wakatuweka katika ili tuwakilishe hawa, kama vile mwenzangu mmoja amesema hapa hivi. Hii na tukiwa hapa hivi hakuna kitu ambacho tunaweza kuwaste. Kwa hivyo Mheshimiwa Speaker, nataka niseme tukiangalia kwa mambo ya vile wale wanaenda kuuliza, ni kweli kama vile watu wanasema, utapata kwamba pesa mingi inaingia wale wanaenda kuomba, lakini hatuoni kitu ambayo inafanya. Mheshimiwa Speaker, maana natoka sehemu ya upande wa North Rift, kule ni asal area, na utapata kwamba ile vita ambayo unasikia watu wanakombana, wanapikana, wanafanya nini,
ni kwa sababu ya ile shida, umaskini ambayo iko katika ile sehemu. Watu naumia, badala mtu anaona sasa kufe, anasema wacha aende kwa jirani. Sasa ingine apate moja na yani mboga ya watoto. Na hiyo imeleta shida. Lakini kama kuna chakula, Mheshimiwa Spika, ambaye inaweza kuingia na kusaidia hawa. Nakumbuka hata kuna wakati tulipitisha hapa hivi tukasema askari ya jeshi na polisi waende na wasaidie usalama katika hiyo area. Mheshimiwa Spika, hata ukienda huko saizi utapata wale wanalia, hawana mafuta, hawana nini, na kuna pesa tulipeana, hatujui kwamba imeingia wapi. Sasa lazima tuwe na, kwa sababu kazi yetu hapa hivi ni kutazama na kutoa macho na kuangalia nini ambayo inafanyika. Ili ile pesa ambayo wananchi, unajua hii pesa si ya mtu, ni raia ndio walitoa taxes yao, kodi yao, jasho yao. Kwa hivyo lazima tuone kwamba ile jasho hao wanapata iwe ni ya ukweli, wapate kwa haki yao na wafurahie. Mheshimiwa Spika, hiyo ndio mimi nataka tukusema kwamba ikiwa tutaendelea namna hii, tusiwe nyumba ambayo inaongea a talking house, ile ambayo unaongea na kuweka tu ile reports kama hiyo inaanza kusanya vumbi katika mahali iko. Lazima tufuatilie. Hata wakati mwingine tuulize hao komiti, ile mliweka hapa hivi mmefikisha wapi? Isije kwamba tunaongea tu hapa hivi, mtu anaongea, watu wanaangalia, vile tunaongea hivi watu sagina wanampa wananchi mawazo safi. Wanaanza kuwa na ile hope kwamba hapa naonekana kuna mwelekeo mzuri. Lakini unaona kwamba mwishowe hakuna. Mheshimiwa Spika, hii ndio nataka tunihimize. Nikisema kwamba hii nyumba ya sasa, the current parliament, Mheshimiwa Spika, naona kwamba kuna watu ambao wanaweza kusema ukweli bila kuficha. Kuna wakati ungesema kitu hapa hivi, kwa sababu nyumba ilikuwa kule ni opposition, kule ni serikali upande hii. Lakini sasa hizi utapata kwamba hata yule kiongozi ambaye anatoka upande wa wale wachache anapepa na gari ya KOSGEI. Kwa hivyo sisi yote hapa ni serikali sasa. Kwa hivyo tuweke nguvu yetu pamoja. Hata niliona ile kijana yangu juzi tuliweka hapa hivi kwa minority leader, leo anatembea na KOSGEI hapa mbele. Nikamwambia basi hiyo ndio sasa serikali inakaa namna hiyo. Si kama wakati yule mwingine ukaona kama kuna mtu opposition hapa hivi na serikali hapa hivi, yule mwingine aweze kuangalia huyu mwingine. Na sisi ni wana Kenya. Na sisi pia ni nyumba moja. Ukiangalia ile imeandikwa hapa hivi, hii nyumba ni ya wana Kenya ambao nataka wafurahie. Kwa hivyo Mheshimiwa Spika, sitaki kusema zaidi, nataka tuniunge mkono na kushukuru wale komiti kwamba tuende namna hivi, lakini sasa tuweke nguvu zaidi mpaka tuone kwamba kama sasa ile juzi tunasikia kuna mafuta ya 17 billion. Mama moja naangaishwa. Wengine wanatokea hata na shukuru wale watu ambao walifukuza watu kwa kanisa. Najua unaenda huko na kusema haleluya na jana ulifanya dhambi. Kwa mimi hata naweza kurarua watu kama hawa. Asante Mheshimiwa Spika.
The Honorable Zamzam Chimba, Mombasa.
Asante sana Mheshimiwa Spika. Kwanza ningependa kusema tuwe tukiangalia tarakalishi kuhakikisha kuwa mtu ambaye amekuja mwanzo katika bunge kutoa hoja zake anapewa nafasi mwanzo. Wengine tunakuja mapema ili tuwai, pengine tuna safari zingine. Mheshimiwa Spika, Mheshimiwa Spika, nikiweza kuchangia kama mama Mombasa County, hii ripoti ambayo imeletwa hapa kuhusu mambo ya deni na mambo ya privatization katika kamati yao. Mheshimiwa Spika, mimi nataka kuwa mwazi. Serikali ya Kenya imekuwa kila siku ni madeni, kila uchao ni madeni Mheshimiwa Spika. Na kawaida ya madeni yakichukuliwa katika taifa Mheshimiwa Spika, huwa yanakusudia malengo ya kuweza kuleta uzalishaji zaidi, ili yale mambo yatakayozalishwa kutokamana na deni yawe yatazalisha zaidi yaweze kulipa lile deni Mheshimiwa Spika. Mheshimiwa Spika, deni huchukuliwa kwa sababu ya mambo ya maendeleo, mambo ya kuweza kujenga taifa na uweza kutoa mzigo kwa yule Mkenya ambaye pengine angeweza kutozwa ushuru zaidi. Lakini Mheshimiwa Spika, inasikitisha, licha ya kuwa madeni yamekuwa makubwa Mheshimiwa Spika, pesa zinabadhiriwa. Mpaka sasa toka Septemba 2022 mpaka Aprili 2023 Mheshimiwa Spika, inasikitisha kuwa deni la ndani sisi Kenya limefika 4.7 trillion Mheshimiwa Spika. Na Mheshimiwa Spika, nikilinganisha na ile serikali iliyoondoka kwa miaka 10 iliweza kuchukua deni ya trilioni 6 Mheshimiwa Spika. Lakini serikali hii kwa mwaka mmoja tu tayari tuna deni la ndani 4.7 trillion. Hii inasikitisha Mheshimiwa Spika, ile kasi ambayo serikali inachukua deni na yale mazao ambayo sisi tunao Mheshimiwa Spika. Mheshimiwa Spika, mimi nazungumza nikiangalia katika hizi takwimu ninazoangalia hapa Mheshimiwa Spika. Kwa hiyo mimi napenda kuzungumza hivi. Hakuna makosa serikali kuchukua deni. Serikali inaweza kuchukua deni ikiwa inakusudia.
Order, honorable member. What's the point of order, Honorable Shure?
Honorable Speaker, this is a House of Records, and I'll just want to correct my colleague. The total debt of 10.5 is what we are talking about, 4.7 being the local domestic borrowing in total. So it's not just specific for this period of time that this report talks about. I thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Asante Chair wa kamati ya ripoti hii ya leo. Ndio maana nikasema ni deni la ndani. Sikusema deni la nje. Nimesema deni la ndani. Na hii yote bado inasikitisha Mheshimiwa Spika, kwa sababu Wakenya wamekamuliwa sana. Mimi nikifikiria kama mama kaunti ya Mombasa, leo wajukuu wangu ama vitukuu vyangu watakuja kudaiwa pesa ambazo kwamba hawazijui Mheshimiwa Spika. Ikiwa deni lachukuliwa huku kulipa huku, hii inaonyesha kuwa serikali ama taifa haliendi vizuri Mheshimiwa Spika. Mheshimiwa Spika, linalosikitisha hata zaidi, sisi leo kama wabunge leo tunajadili ripoti hii ya madeni ambayo Kenya iko nayo, wakati wa kuchukua madeni sisi hatuhusishwi katika bunge hili Mheshimiwa Spika. Na mimi ningependa kuomba kama mheshimiwa katika bunge hili kuwa madeni yoyote ambayo serikali inatarajia kuchukua iweze kutuletea hapa ndani ya bunge Mheshimiwa Spika, tupige msasa, tuulize maswali, tujue ni kwa nini. Je, ni deni la dharura? Kama si deni ya dharura Mheshimiwa Spika, tuweze kupinga. Na ikiwa ni deni la dharura tunaweza tukaelewa, ikiwa serikali haina namna tuweza kuelewa Mheshimiwa Spika. Mheshimiwa Spika, mimi nataka kusema hivi. Naangalia tena nikirudia hapa. Nimeona kuna World Bank ambayo ilileta bilioni karibu 16 ya kuweza kusaidia, na nimeona wakizungumza mambo ya boreholes katika sehemu ambazo zimeathirika na ukame Mheshimiwa Spika. Lakini mimi nikiangalia sehemu hizi ndio wale ambao wanalia kuwa hizi boreholes hawajapata Mheshimiwa Spika. Na ni utata mkubwa, kwa sababu sisi tunasema kuna kila mwaka bilioni 700 ilikuwa inapotea. Na hivi ndio vile pesa huwa zinapotea Mheshimiwa Spika. Serikali inaweza kuwa na nia nzuri pengine ya kuchukua pesa, lakini hizi pesa zinapotea kwenye mifuko ya watu, haziwezi kuleta natija katika taifa Mheshimiwa Spika. Mimi nasikitika kama mama katika taifa hili kuona kuwa pesa zinabadhiriwa kiolelaolela, pesa zinachukuliwa zenda kwenye mifuko ya watu Mheshimiwa Spika. Kumbuka juzi ile hali ilivyokuwa ndani ya Jomo Kenyatta International Airport, maji yalikuwa yanamiminika, yanamwagika. Ilikuwa aibu katika taifa hili kuona wageni wanaingia wananyeshewa ndani ya airport, wala si nje wakitoka kwenye ndege, wakiwa ndani kwenye check-in wageni wanamwagikiwa na maji, wakati ambapo sisi tunajua pesa za ukarabati zipo, pesa za kufanya mambo haya zipo, lakini hatukuona natija yoyote pale airport Mheshimiwa Spika. Ilikuwa aibu. Aibu nyingine Mheshimiwa Spika, sisi tumeona mvua imekuja kubwa sana, hasa katika kaunti ya Mombasa, na kama mama Mombasa kaunti naweza kutuma rambirambi zangu. Pole kwa wale ambao walifelewa na jamaa zao, pole kwa wale ambao walipoteza mali zao. Lakini awali ya yote Mheshimiwa Spika, nasikitika kuwa hapa kuna mbunge mmoja alizungumza ambaye ndo anachea budget, akasema kuwa bilioni 6 zilikuwa zimetengwa katika mambo ya disaster management Mheshimiwa Spika. Hizi pesa hazikufikiwa magavana. Kile tulichoona ni kuwa naibu wa rais ameenda kuangalia waathiriwa, badala aomboleze na waathiriwa, yeye ameenda kaanza kutukana magavana Mheshimiwa Spika. Inakuwa mbaya kwa sababu hata hizi pesa zenyewe tunaambiwa kuwa zilikuwa katika mamlaka yake yeye. Kwa hiyo angekuwa mbora zaidi kama naibu wa rais angeweza kutoa pole kwanza, akasema pengine hili na lili lilifanya tukachelewa kupeleka pesa, lakini pesa ndio hizi tumeleta Mheshimiwa Spika, kuliko yeye kwenda kusingizia magavana na kuwashurutu kuwa zile pesa mlizopewa za kufanya maendeleo mengine chukueni muweze kufanya mambo ya disaster. Mheshimiwa Spika, kila mapeni kitolewa katika kaunti huwa ina shughuli yake, na leo gavana akitumia pesa pengine ya mshahara kwenda kufanya mambo ya disaster ataleta shida nyingine kubwa, kwa sababu wale wafanyikazi wa kaunti leo wakikosa mshahara itakuwa tena ni izara katika taifa nzima. Mheshimiwa Spika, Mheshimiwa Spika, hilo lilinifanya nikatamausha sana kama mama kaunti wa Mombasa, na sikupenda zile tetesi zilizokuwa zikiendelea kwa sababu ya pesa ambayo ilikuwa katika bajeti. Mheshimiwa Spika, na kwa hiyo mimi napenda kusema hivi, pesa zozote zinazokuja katika taifa hii kwenye msaada wowote ambazo zina malengo yake ziende katika yale malengo ambayo yamekusudiwa. Mheshimiwa Spika, pesa zinazoibiwa ni nyingi, na leo tumezungumza hapa ikatamausha sana kumsikia kiongozi wa wengi akiita mwandishi wa habari kuwa yuko illiterate. Haifai matamshi kama hayo ndani ya bunge hili. Wale ambao wanawaona ndio illiterate waandishi wa habari ndio wale ambao wanaolipa ushuru na wanafinyika kule chini. Mheshimiwa Spika, tuheshimu Wakenya wote, awe maskini awe tajiri, apewe heshima yake. Mheshimiwa Spika, Mheshimiwa Spika, nimeangalia tena katika bajeti hii Mheshimiwa, katika ripoti hii Mheshimiwa Spika, nikaona kuwa pesa zilitengwa za kuweza kufanya skills ambayo ilikuwa inagusa Jumuiya ya Afrika Mashariki, nafikiri nimeona hapa Mheshimiwa Spika, lakini sijaona mambo haya yakitendeka ndani ya Mombasa County. Mheshimiwa Spika, na haya ndio yale ambayo tunasema makadirio yanakuja ya pesa lakini hayaendi kwa walengwa. Mheshimiwa Spika, kila Mkenya ni mtoa ushuru, na kila anayetoa ushuru lazima aweze kupata ile aweze kupata zile pesa zake, utumizi wake uweze kumfikia kule chini. Mheshimiwa Spika, Mheshimiwa Spika, mimi najua kati ya malengo ambayo ya kukopa pesa ni kuweza kuzuia Wakenya kulipa ushuru wa juu, lakini hivi karibuni Mheshimiwa Spika, ushuru umetozwa, ushuru mkubwa sana kwa Wakenya. Wakenya mpaka sasa wanalia. Ushuru umepanda, kila kitu kimepanda, na deni nalo pia linapanda, wakati ambapo ilikuwa inafaa kama deni limepanda ushuru wa wananchi usiwe juu. Mheshimiwa Spika, kitu ambacho naweza kupongeza katika ripoti hii ni zile pesa zilizokwenda kwa wakulima, kwa sababu wakulima walikuwa wanahitaji sana ili tuweze kuleta mazao, taifa liweze kupata chakula. Mheshimiwa Spika, na napongeza pia zile pesa ambazo zimeenda kwa afya, watu wanahitaji wapate afya bora. Mheshimiwa Spika, lakini pia katika hivi equipments ama vitu ambavyo vinatumika ndani ya hospitali. Mheshimiwa Spika, kuna hospitali nyingi pia hawajapata vitu hivi. Mheshimiwa Spika, na hapo pia tunakwenda pale, pengine mwananchi tuko 5 na mimi mwizi nichukue 10. Hiyo ndio mambo ambayo inaendelea katika taifa hili. Mheshimiwa Spika, kwa hiyo mimi kama mama county napinga haswa uchumi ulivyo mbaya, serikali kuweza kukopa kila siku, inakopa kwa kasi sana. Mheshimiwa Spika, serikali wawache kuomba. Hii ambayo wameshatoa kwa mwananchi, pesa ambazo wanazichukua waweze kuwekeza mahali ambapo ni sawa, wananchi waweze kupunguza ule uzito ambao wako nao. Mheshimiwa Spika, hili deni likiendelea hivi itakuja kutusumbua. Mheshimiwa Spika, na lingine mimi nataka kusema, mkisikia wananchi wanalia kule chini, tuwaelewe, tusiweze kuwapelekea mambo ya ubishi. Tuelewe wananchi hawa, sisi ndio wametuchagua, leo tuko bungeni, wananchi wanalia, hali ziko mbaya, tusiweze kugombana hadharani kuonyesha yale mambo ambayo si sawa. Mheshimiwa Spika, wakati wananchi wanahangaika. Mheshimiwa Spika, mimi namalizia nikisema dawa ya deni ni kulipa, na kama tumeamua kulipa hii deni, basi tusiwafinye wananchi. Pesa tulizozichukua sisi, tulizokopa, lazima tuletewe hapa na waje hapa katika bunge hili. Mheshimiwa Spika, watuambie hizi pesa zilienda sehemu fulani, mazao yake yakawa ni hivi, hapa tumebaki na hii, hapa bado tunadaiwa hii. Lakini mambo ya kuletewa figures ambazo zimeandikwa na sisi hatujui pesa zimetumika vipi. Mheshimiwa Spika, hatuwezi kukubali katika bunge la Kenya. Mheshimiwa Spika, Wakenya wanatuangalia sisi, wametuamini, wametupigia kura, sisi tukaweka ahadi kuwa tutakuja kuwapigania Mheshimiwa Spika. Leo hii angalia bunge lilivyo wazi Mheshimiwa Spika. Ikiwa kutakuja mjadala katika bunge hii ya kuweza kumfinya mwananchi Mheshimiwa Spika, bunge lote huwa limejaa watu kule wa kusema ai. Leo mjadala unaohusu mwananchi, wote wamekimbia wameenda kufanya biashara zao Mheshimiwa Spika. Hii mimi nachukia, na nitawaambia wabunge wenzangu hasa wa Kenya Kwanza, hii sehemu yenu yote iko tupu, na hii inaonyesha vile nyinyi hamwafikirii wananchi wa Kenya, hamwafikirii wale wanahangaika kule chini. Nasikia kulia Mheshimiwa Spika, nasikia kuliwa. Mjadala huu ni mjadala unaohusu mwananchi wa chini Mheshimiwa Spika, na mimi nawaambia chuma ni chenu, mutarudi kule kwa wananchi kutafuta kura, na kule mtapata majibu yenu. Asante sana Mheshimiwa Spika. Wako wapi hapa wako?
Nafasi hii itamwendea mbunge wa Kitui Rural, Bwana David Mbooni.
Thank you very much, Speaker. I really want to be brief. I want to thank, first of all, let me thank the Chair, Honorable Shule, and his team for bringing up this report. Although the report has a lot of gaps which need to be filled, but it's a very good attempt. I would say that before 2002, we did not have a very clear register of debts because the debt was being managed by central bank. But currently, we have a central bank which is managing domestic debts, and also Treasury managing external debts. Honorable Speaker, I think recently we passed what we call debt anchor. That is a debt at net present value, and which we passed it at 55% plus or minus to the GDP. But when you see the report, it shows that we are at 66% of GDP. And just this week, we passed the supplementary budget with a deficit of 800 billion. That means we are going to add to our debt. And I normally say that as National Assembly, we are actually a contributor to the national debt, especially when we pass budgets with the deficit. You're already telling Treasury and government to go and borrow. So we cannot run away from the blame. Chair, the report speaks to the fact that from May 2022 to April 2023, we signed loans with the 19 external finance entities. Unfortunately, and this is something which we need to be very careful, only 3 loans amounted to 24 billion out of 213 was dispersed. And when you look at the report, Treasury is not giving us the reasons why the loans were not dispersed. And that is one of the gaps which the committee should look into. But I will say, because when I was working in Treasury, before I joined this place, I was part, at one time, I negotiated a loan for this country. And I also managed a project, a donor-funded project. But one of the reasons why there are delays in disbursement is lack of provision of counterpart funds. Because normally when you are negotiating a loan, the donors will tell you, okay, we will fund 80%. Look for the 20%. And most likely, and most instantly, the government does not provide that 20%. And therefore, the donors will not be able to give you the 80% before you provide the 20%. The other reasons is administrative conditions which they give you. They tell you, preserve or set an office, set a unit, and those kind of things. And if you don't set up, they will not give you the loan. The delayed loan disbursement have asked implications. And you remember 2 weeks ago or what? Something like that. The Condoro budgets, he brought up an issue of the penalties which the country is paying because of not accessing the funds. And she said that we had to pay, I think last financial year, we had to pay 1.5 billion shillings as penalties. You know, these are a lot of money. I mean, this money you are giving out without any return. And I think we need to look at that. The other reasons is that we may not benefit from the project by the time the repayment begins. You know, when you delay, you know, all the projects has a beginning and end period. Now, the time you are paying, the time you are accessing all the money and the implementation of the project, then, and you start paying, the impact of that project may not assist in repayment of the loan. That's another thing. The other thing is incomplete projects. At times, when the period ends, you know, you may end up with an incompleted project. And that's why you find so many projects. I think we have over 4,000 projects in this country which are not completed. And that's the money which this country, we have put in those projects, and but they are not impacting to the socio-economic welfare of the Kenyans. Mr. Speaker, the report says that, points out that the Treasury failed to give them critical information. And it's true. I mean, when you look at the report, they did not provide what we call debt register. You know, we need to have a debt register. That's something very important to this country. We should indicate the implementing agencies. Who is implementing this project? Who is this person? What are the key performance indicators, outputs, and the contract signs? You remember this time of strategy gauge. You know, up to now, I don't know how much we are supposed to pay and how much we got for strategy gauge, because there are so many contradicting information. Some are saying 300 billion, others say 400 billion. So at the end of the day, we are not sure how much money we took as a loan and how much we are going to pay in the process. The other thing I think in this register, we also need to look at, the register should also have regions in which these projects are being implemented. You see, we may be taking a lot of loans, but these loans may be used in particular regions. What about the distribution of these projects, which are funded by donors, which all of us, we are contributing in payment? And I'll give you an example. Since independent, where I come from, Eastern region, Raw Eastern, we have only got 2 big projects. The Kibwezi, Kitui, Bodoni Road, which is not complete. Then we have Wake Dam, which is not complete, since independent. So, Honorable Chair, I think you need to request, and I hope you could go back to many years to give us a report which shows us for the last 10 years or so, how much have we got as loans, how this money has been utilized, how these projects are impacting on the welfare of this country. Chair, as I alluded, this report, why there's a loan disbursement is mostly is because of lack of budget allocation. And I think this is something which we need to, before Treasury, and I think we have asked a lawyer that we need to look at the loans which have been to be contracted. Before even they go ahead and sign, they should be able to tell us where are they going to get the counterfeit funds, so that there's no delays in disbursements. And we also need proper planning for the loans. We cannot have taking loans because somebody is giving us loans, and we have that problem. I'll tell you, we have that problem. And we have quite incompetent negotiators in the government. I mean, you hear there's a loan, you run there. You are not even reading what are the requirements for that loan. So at the end of the day, we take loans with high interest rates, and we even don't know what we are going to do with the loan. Mr. Chair, we need to move from commercial loans and domestic loans. You know, domestic loans have a very bad negative impact on our businesses, because immediately government competes with private sector. We call it crowding out effect. Many people want to invest in treasury bills and bonds because the security, the risks are lower than giving to private sector. So what we need to do is we need to go for concessional loans. But these concessional loans, we need to look at them and see if they have conditions which we cannot meet. Let's not go for loans because they are there. Let's look at the conditions of these loans so that at least we can be able to get loans which are going to benefit this country.
The member for your time is up. This is now the chance for the member for Mandera West.
Honorable Speaker, I'm eagerly waiting for the next order.
Member for Kaiti.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity. And I want to take this chance to thank the chairman of the committee for the work they have done on this report. Mr. Speaker, the report is good, as I can say, but it has some question marks, if I can say, Mr. Speaker. Because, Mr. Speaker, we all know that borrowing is not bad, because we all borrow. Even us, as members of parliament, we do borrow. And as a country, to borrow is not a big problem. But the problem, Mr. Speaker, comes when we borrow the money, and instead of prioritizing what we are going to do with the money, Mr. Speaker, we do projects which are not a priority to the country, Mr. Speaker. Now, Mr. Speaker, as we are speaking, Mr. Speaker, they are the necessity of this country. For example, if we talk of food security, it is true, Mr. Speaker, food security is key to our country. And you go to countries like West Africa, you get that the economy is not that strong. But because of food security, they can do their daily activities smoothly because of food security. Now, as we are speaking, Mr. Speaker, it's a rain season in our country. Mr. Speaker, now, as you know, in our country, some parts of the country, Madam Speaker, has a problem of water, especially where I come from in Lower Eastern, Mr. Speaker. But now, Mr. Speaker, there is a project which was started 2016-2017, Thwackenham, Mr. Speaker. And if, Mr. Speaker, we prioritize that dam, right now as you are speaking, there's a lot of water going to the Indian Ocean, Mr. Speaker. And, Mr. Speaker, after the rains, just 1 month or 2 months will be crying of water. People will be walking to kilometers to look for water. And as we talk now, Mr. Speaker, the way situation the economy is, Mr. Speaker, if we can have water to some of areas like Lower Eastern, whereby we have a problem of rains, Mr. Speaker, that water can be used for irrigation. If we use the water for irrigation, Mr. Speaker, and we do farming, we can improve in food security, and we avoid looking money for relief food or asking for donors to give relief food to our people, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, sometimes I wonder, because we do borrow money, and instead of doing, like now we have so many projects, Mr. Speaker, stored projects across the country. If we can balance, Mr. Speaker, if we borrow and balance and complete projects in our country, Mr. Speaker, I think it can be benefit to our country, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I can say that in the current economy, Mr. Speaker, like now, it is true, we need money. And our budget sometimes, because as we can say now, the debt ceiling of a country is going to 10 trillion, Mr. Speaker. It's a threat to our country, Mr. Speaker. But, Mr. Speaker, if we can be transparent And if we are borrowing money, we be open to each other. And we stop blaming each other. Oh, this government did this, oh, the other government did this. Now we need the current government to take the mantle and move on. We want to see what they do with the money they borrow. We want to see the project, the stored project done, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, yesterday I went to my constituency, Mr. Speaker, and there's a road which comes from KOSGEI to Kilungu, Mr. Speaker. And this road cuts across 2 counties, Mr. Speaker. And now as we are speaking, the road is cut off by the rains. You cannot now communicate from Masailand to Cumberland through KOSGEI Road. Madam Speaker, it's a serious issue which needs a lot of assistance. And when I approached Kera, Mr. Speaker, they told me there's no money. Madam Speaker, now you can see how the people of Kaiti will suffer because now the road is cut off. We depend on agriculture. We do farming. Mr. Speaker, now we cannot transport our youth from the lower side to upper side. We cannot transport our produce from Kaiti to Nairobi through that road because already it's cut off. Mr. Speaker, I think this is some of the projects or some of the priorities we need to give if we borrow, Mr. Speaker. We have other ways, Mr. Speaker. As a country, we need to chart the way forward. Yes, we are borrowing. But, Mr. Speaker, I want to say I saw the government, the current government, trying to increase taxes to increase the revenue. But I think this is not the way to go because, Mr. Speaker, the more we increase taxes, we are not going to get the revenue as they think, but we'll create more poor people. We'll create poverty in our country, Mr. Speaker. Instead of creating atmosphere of our people to do business, to create revenue, Mr. Speaker, will be creating a problem to our country. Mr. Speaker, it's important when we are doing our project, Mr. Speaker, we look the loopholes we have in our country. And, Mr. Speaker, one loophole we have in our country is corruption. We borrow money, but that money, almost half of the money, goes to people's pockets. And we divert, we lose focus, Mr. Speaker. And we need to fight this animal of borrowing in the House, Mr. Speaker. Because if we make sure that we seal the loophole of corruption in our country, I think, Mr. Speaker, we will be in a position to do great in our country. Mr. Speaker, why do we borrow? Yes, we borrow to meet our needs. Because sometimes, Mr. Speaker, we pass budgets and we don't have enough resources, Mr. Speaker. It's good, Mr. Speaker. But, Mr. Speaker, as we do this, I want to say that the time has come as a country, we chat, we talk, we talk in one voice to see how we can avoid this high borrowing, Mr. Speaker. I remember when this government was coming to taking over the government, they are saying that they don't want to borrow. But now they are borrowing even more than the other government, Mr. Speaker. So I think we need to do something. We need to chart the way forward, and we need to see how we can be independent. We can use the little resources we have. If we can concentrate with, for example, we concentrate with one item like in infrastructure, Mr. Speaker. If we make sure that we have good roads which enters our villages, our farmers, areas like West Kenya, Western Kenya, and Nyanza, whereby they do farming, and also Central, Mr. Speaker. If we have good roads, they will be transporting their produce, and they'll make good revenue. And that can help our economy to grow, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, I want to say that I want to support the report, but I want to advise the government, Mr. Speaker, we need to do a lot to avoid this borrowing. Thank you.
Thank you. The Honorable Doris Donya, member for Kisii.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Such a good moment when we are now talking of what is on the ground, how our economy is, and when we look back, Mr. Speaker, during Mwai Kibaki's time, he left office and Kenyans were very excited that our economy has improved. when we have more debts, Mr. Speaker, there are so many things that happen in a particular country. Even the borrowing rates, Mr. Speaker, goes high. Business people can't do without borrowing. That affects their businesses. You can see at this particular time, so many bank members have closed down their bank accounts or they've been rendered inactive. Most of the business people, Mr. Speaker, they can't even afford to have their next products or produce, because what they sell, it's directly into their stomach, not to their banks. And Mr. Speaker, when you borrow money, there's that, if I can quote, kuomba arusi kulipa matanga. It has always been a cry. We have this debt, we have that debt. When there's borrowing, there are good photos that are taken. Media reports, today Kenya has received this loan, this and that. Sometimes you are never even told what that money has done. But come to the time of payment, that is when it is now kulipa ni matanga. There's a lot of cry. Oh, we need to do this with our budget so that we can pay. You go to the ground, you want to understand what this money did to its citizens. Things are changing, the economic times are very hard, Mr. Speaker. Currently, as I stand here, there are so many answers we can give as leaders to improving our economy instead of having these loans. Like half of Kenya is not developed. Half of it is left idle. Our land, it's not cultivated. The rains are here. Yes, Mr. Speaker. We have no good storage mechanisms. The rains will be off. We will start the drought. People will be crying of hunger. While we have this precious commodity called water, carrying our people, destroying properties and everything, instead of it being stored so that it can be used in the future. You saw the planting of trees, Mr. Speaker. I don't know if it came at such a particular time that with the rains, definitely all the trees that were planted have been washed away. There is nothing you can do when you have a lot of water and there are plants that have been planted, Mr. Speaker. We have missed on how to place our priorities. We seem to be prioritizing things that are not supposed to be given a priority. Like now, Mr. Speaker, go to universities. They are crying. We don't have funds. Those are schools. Education is key. The best gift, Mr. Speaker, you can give to your child is education. Yes, the government has promised they are giving education, but they are not funding what they've promised to give. Come to JSS, the pain that those teachers go through, Mr. Speaker. One teacher teaching 12 subjects. For example, you trained as a sign language teacher. How do you train that if you didn't train for it? Which subject will you have to offer, Mr. Speaker, as an alternative? Why did I bring up this issue? Misplaced priorities. If we put our priorities right, Kisii County alone is a food basket. It can feed the whole of this country. You go there, the land is very green, Mr. Speaker. You just love it if you are flying. You are flying. You look down and you say, these people are blessed. It rains well, the grass, the trees are green, but shocking is immediately the rains are, if it rained 11 in the morning, by 6 in the evening, women are carrying jerrycans to the river to fetch water. Yet as a country, we can't understand that instead of taking loans to do other things, we can have dams in Kisii, we have plenty of water. Why do we have good dairy farmers from Central? Because they have, I can say they are 60%. They have 60% connectivity of water. The other good places like Kisii, Nyanza, we go to Lowland, to Western, it's also green. We can have good projects done there. Kitale, we can have enough food. So, Mr. Speaker, before we even talk of these loans, if I take a loan as Donya, believe you me, I will pay that loan. I will not wait to use that money. Then later I say, the way they are, common mwananchi out there, they are saying, vitu haviko sawa, mambo ni mbaya. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. The member for Laikipia East, the Honorable Magi Kiunjuru. Kiunjuru, your mic has a problem, so use the one in front of you. Could you give him the one next to him? Or is that whole row? It's the whole row, okay.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I also rise in support of this report. The chairman and his committee has done a good job. It's also good for Kenyans to know where we are and where we are coming from. And on the onset, Mr. Speaker, loans are not bad, because even those who are in business, entrepreneurs in this country, if you like, you assess how many successful Kenyans have no loans, might be you'll get none. Because even those with billions want to have a trillion to continue with their businesses. The only problem with a loan is when you take a loan not knowing what to do with that loan. Or take a loan with the wrong projection. Or take a loan and you get excited and you use it for the wrong purpose. And therefore, we really need to ask ourselves where the rain started beating us. The loans we are discussing today, they are accumulation. It's not just a loan that was taken the last 1 year. We are talking of loans that had been taken time to time from the government of Mwai Kibaki, administration of Uhuru Kenyatta, and now you have the administration of William Samoei Ruto. What you ask ourselves are the experiences that we have. How did Kibaki manage his loans? At what time did our appetite for loan superseded the reason even why we are borrowing these loans? How have we been managing our loans? Have we been able to evaluate ourselves? Did we even have a plan before we took the loans? Because even in business, you have to have a business plan. What do you intend to do? And the outcome. If you're getting a moratorium, for how long? If you're going to repay your loan, at what particular juncture are you also going to bridge the gap and now start counting on profit? Because a loan is a loan. Either it is taken by Mama Boga, whether it is taken by an industrialist or a government. The end game is that when a government borrows, there is a grace period whereby at that particular juncture, we shall also be able to break even. If you are borrowing for roads, might be after 50 years, the country start benefiting out of that loan. Or we are borrowing so that this road can trigger economic activity here and there. If it's about electricity, to trigger economic activities. They are supposed to stimulate. Any loan is supposed to stimulate the economy one way or the other. Some short-term, others long-term. We were told when we went to take SGR that might be we shall start getting benefits 50 years. I agree. The loans we are taking today, some loads, another 20 years. But the question that we must ask ourselves now, where we are today, we are talking of hunger in the country, eradicating hunger. We are talking of the cost of living. If we start blame game, who took the loan, how was the loan used, how are we going to take this one, then we shall have not have addressed the question that is facing us today. Because, Mr. Speaker, this administration is only 1 year old. The loans we are paying were taken 5, 6, 7 years ago. We know of how the boats were taken. And therefore, we cannot say that this administration came the other day and they should now be able to explain to Kenyans why we are in a deep hole. The explanation is very clear, that we have a debt here, and whoever comes in, even after William Samoei Ruto, will come and shoulder the responsibility of paying the loans that this administration will take. And therefore, we must realize that the loans that we got from the previous government, it is the high time we start now planning. What we need to do is to give information to Kenyans, for Kenyans to understand every step that we are taking to stabilize this economy. That already we are in deep sea, the waves are there, the currency, the current is very, very, very heavy for us, and how do we navigate out to safety? Mr. Speaker, we need now to think of short term, not long term. If you look at all these loans, the way they are tabulated here, I have looked at them. Some have gone to pastoral economy, some have gone to agriculture value chain, others have gone to issues to do with the syndicated short-term, other syndicated loans. If you look at it, macro, small and medium enterprises, and they are distributed across the country. Nobody can argue that these loans were directed to one region of Kenya. They are distributed all over. They are in northeastern, they are in coast, they are in western, they are in Nyanza, they are in central province, and therefore it is our problem. When we come to blame each other, let us remember these monies are being paid and they were taken all over. No one region can say that we benefited, the other say we never benefited. And therefore, it's a question of asking ourselves, did they go to the right usage? If you look at some of these loans, they went to enhance water, issues to do with the water, others about agriculture. The one question we should ask ourselves, when 5-10 billion was taken to a certain region to develop agriculture value chain, was it used for that purpose? If it was about water, was it for that purpose? If you look at, for example, the last 15 years, we have done a lot of work in northern Kenya on issues to do with water. Look at what is happening today. The El Nino is here with us, they will be left with no drop of water. Look at western region, a lot of agriculture value chain, most of the money went there. Today, are we able to pay those loans out of the intended use of that money? Look at small and macro. Are we able to generate money? Can we say 10 years down the line, these are the benefits? Because you ought to have seen the benefits that have been accrued from the loans that we took. Today, once you talk of agriculture value chain, do we have any supporting institution that's supporting agriculture? Both livestock and horticulture, and even the cash crop you have in this country, all directorates are dead. Sugar directorate, dead. Tea directorate, dead. Coffee directorate, dead. Horticulture, everything is dead. Look at pastoralist areas. Are we improving the animals that we have there? Are we controlling diseases? Are we still selling the same bull, 20, 30 kgs, when we are supposed to have gotten a hybrid that can give us 100 kg? Are we supporting those farmers? Are we supporting those institutions that can give us immediate outcome? When I was Minister for Agriculture, we came out with a program that we required only 2.4 billion to make Kenya a seed, potato seed exporter of potato seed, whereby we could have been able to produce all the seed we require in this country and start exporting, and the program was only taking 21 months. Today, if you look at how we can improve our animal breed, in 3 years' time, you can turn around, and I know Mr. Speaker is around here, will be able to tell us that you can turn that economy in as short as 2 years, 3 years. Today, a coffee farmer will be lining up looking for a grafted seed when we have a directorate of our coffee which is dead and cannot be able to be supported. The issues we'll be coming up with today is asking ourselves, are we still going to rely on lanes or we are going to rely on water? Because at the end of the day, Israel relies on water. Kenya relies on lanes. Egypt relies on water. Kenya relies on lane. At what juncture shall we transit from issues of thinking traditional way of doing things to modern way of doing things, using very small amounts of money, turn the economy of this country, and we be committed. Because end game is that I come today, I become the minister. What I see is the 5 years I'm the minister for.
You actually have 1 more minute.
Thank you. The issue here is our mindset. When we come in as an administration of William Samoei Ruto, and we are thinking 5 years or 10 years only, what will benefit us as leaders in only 5 years? We are not planning for our future generation. When we come in as administration of UDA and as opposition as MIO, and not thinking about our mother country, Kenya, that tomorrow, if Azimio will ever take over, they will take over from where Kenya Kwanza left. Mr. Speaker, I believe it is high time that we think as Kenyans and not as political parties, and us know who is leading this country, and that this Kenya is our baby, and together we must take care of it.
Thank you. Fujo 504.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. I've been waiting to make my contribution on this report by the Committee on Public Debt and Privatization Committee. And on the onset, I would not shy away from beginning with what I always do begin with, and which is very important that Kenyans always remember, so that as we progress with the issue of debt, and I like the preceding speaker who has just spoken after me, that this debt has been accumulating over the time. And sometimes there's no need of really just throwing blame game from one place to another, because these things were happening when we were in this country. That I always begin by telling this House that by the time Mwai Kibaki leaves, the so-called debt was only 1.89 trillion. This is very important, so that you see where we are coming from. And that means Moi, who ruled for 25 years together with Kenyatta, who also ruled for those years, about 13, as we know, must have made the debt to be much, much lower. Because if Kibaki is leaving it at 1.89 trillion on June 2013, that is what was our debt. But then all of a sudden from 2013 June, by the time we are getting to 2022, June, that debt has gone to 8.588 trillion. So it's really for us to know and comprehend where we are coming from and what happened between June 2013 and June 2022. That we had not only doubled, in fact, if I go to percentum, which I still have here, Honorable Speaker, we increased debt by 353%. That was terrible. And I love to hear from former Waziri, because he is actually putting it in perspective, that everybody who comes borrows and goes away and imagines his 5 years and walks away, or 10 years and goes away. But we must start looking at this debt as something that is for a holistic view for the entire country. Now, Honorable Speaker, the statistics we have are so limited, but I'm happy that the House, for the first time and in many years, the 12th Parliament did not have this opportunity, is able to speak about public debt, how much, what we are borrowing, where we are taking it to. In the 12th Parliament, there was nothing like this, because people would speak about the budget and concentrate on expenditure rather than where we are getting the money, especially on debt. So in this report, this is just 12 months, Honorable Speaker, just 12 months. And it's beginning from 1st of May 2022 to 31st August 2022, and goes all the way to January 2023, and then 30th April 2023. And then again, it's so specific because it's just dealing with foreign debt. It has not included internal borrowing, which is basically made up of the treasury bills and treasury bonds, which otherwise, like I heard somebody indicate, is also very, very high. So for me, I see space, and great space, for this Parliament, that if we continue with this discourse the way we are going, Honorable Speaker, we have a chance of even now going to legislate and laws that will actually force the executive to, and the treasury therefore, to bring the loans that they sign with international organizations, whether it's the World Bank, IMF, the London Club, the Paris Club, or whatever other bilateral country, to Parliament. And the case studies are very rich, Honorable Speaker. Not only will that be happening in Kenya, but countries like Ghana have already gone that direction, whereby by the time the borrowing is done, Parliament actually approves it. But when you talk to our treasury, they'll tell you that that will take too long, it is complex, it will waste time. But that's not the case. Zimbabwe is another very good example where Parliament will actually resolve the issue of debts. And when you look at the report, Honorable Speaker, I'm proud of this committee because they tell you that externally we have borrowed at the risk of repeating, but let me just repeat, over 19 loans and the disbursement is very little. I don't want to repeat what people talked about this. The only danger in this has been what is called the commitment fees, which I'm sure many speakers spoke about, that we have not received the money yet, but we are paying some commitment fees. The last time I heard about it, it was 1.5 billion. You can imagine that. That because you are not using this money which you committed yourself to take, and you have not taken it, Honorable Speaker, so you have to pay 1.5 billion. I'm aware in the last financial year we paid 499 million in form of commitment fees alone. And that is quite a substantial amount of money. So then the issue of we must take the debt, like one of the honorable members did speak on it, when we are ready to take it, not just to rush and take a loan because the loans are available. Honorable Speaker, the other thing I would wish then to speak on is the issue of how the debts are dispersed. And I think very many members have spoken on this, that it needs to be dispersed quickly so that it can actually have an impact on the budget itself, finance the budget, because these debts are taken not only for a joke, but actually to finance the budget. At a time when we are having now liquidity difficulties, we have the exchange rate difficulties, we have imbalances in the balance of trade, and very high debt servicing expenditure, then we need to have these monies dispersed quickly. The issue of management of the debts is another issue that I would really want to speak about, because if you manage your debt well, you will always remain afloat and survive the rigors of economy. And your currency will also survive the shock waves that do come with the rising interest rates. Because like now, when you look at Kenya, many investors will be very shy because they are not sure whether we shall be paying the Eurobond or not be paying that particular Eurobond. So they are prospecting, and therefore they would not want to do business with us. So the debt management becomes very important. And historically, debt management has been dangerous for countries. If in recent past you want to speak about Greece, which is just the other day, and the other country in Eastern Asia, but I would even take it back to the times of Khedive Ismail in Egypt, who took so many loans and he was unable to pay the loans, and therefore foreign countries came in, notably France and Britain, to just take over the Suez Canal, take over the economy of the country and start managing it. And I think the recent most example